In the dead of night behind the iron gates of Buckingham Palace, a shocking order was quietly drafted as Prince William, firm-jawed and resolute, summoned only his most trusted aides, setting in motion a decision that would shatter centuries of royal tradition and leave Queen Camilla visibly shaken as her influence slipped away. This was no quiet warning but a declaration of royal war. For days there had been murmurs, unusual movements at Kensington, unannounced visits from senior royal staff, and Camilla's sudden absence from the official calendar, but no one expected what followed. Under cover of darkness, William convened a private war council, bypassing protocol and refusing intermediaries, making it clear this was a burden he alone would carry. Behind the closed doors of the Queen's Gallery, 6 figures gathered around a sealed leather folder bearing a blunt, chilling title, Exile Directive. It was not symbolic but legally binding within the royal household's internal hierarchy, ordering Camilla's complete removal from court appearances, public-facing duties, and ceremonial roles. William signed without hesitation, repeating the word non-negotiable as if daring any challenge. Palace insiders later described his voice as calm but cold, the tone of someone who had already mourned the relationship. This was not merely about Camilla's behavior, but about timing, as King Charles's recent health decline opened a door no one could have imagined months earlier. In a rare show of unity, Princess Anne and Prince Edward had already been informed, and not only were they aware, some had quietly given their support. Sources suggest that Princess Anne and Prince Edward may have even assisted William in drafting portions of the final directive. If true, this points to something far deeper, a generational shift in control, a quiet coup without a crown, and a realignment of loyalties within the monarchy's inner circle. Yet not everyone was in the loop. Queen Camilla's own staff, many of whom had served her loyally for decades, were caught completely off guard. One royal aide admitted that the expressions on their faces said it all. No one expected it, and no one truly believed it until it had already been executed. In that single night, William didn't merely draw a line. He effectively erased a queen's presence with the stroke of a pen. Oh, what drove William to the brink, and why did he risk igniting the most significant royal firestorm in decades? Rumors of Camilla's quiet consolidation of power had circulated for some time, but the palace was unprepared for her latest moves. Whispers of unauthorized orders, backdoor alliances, and an attempted reshuffle of royal staff reached William's ears. Her overreach began subtly, almost invisibly, as palace intrigues often do. Decisions were increasingly being made outside the usual channels. Senior aides received contradictory instructions, some unsigned, others carrying Camilla's unmistakable signature, bypassing standard approval chains. What initially seemed like minor confusion escalated into quiet chaos. Names were added and removed from royal duty rosters without William's knowledge, and invitations to high-level diplomatic dinners were extended to individuals with close ties to Camilla, many of whom had no official role within the monarchy. The final breach came when Camilla allegedly attempted to override William's authority on key palace appointments. A trusted advisor of William's was suddenly sidelined without explanation, replaced by a long-retired courtier loyal to Camilla. At first, William was skeptical until screenshots surfaced of private messages suggesting she had lobbied select foreign dignitaries behind the scenes. This wasn't mere overreach, it was orchestrated, and William could no longer ignore the implications. Camilla wasn't waiting to rule, she believed she already did. Matters were further complicated by the growing tension between Catherine and Camilla, increasingly hard to conceal in public. Behind palace doors, the conflict went far beyond fashion or photographs. It centered on control of the royal narrative. Camilla reportedly dismissed Catherine's efforts to modernize public engagements as unbecoming of the crown, and when she began dictating who could accompany Catherine on solo tours, the line had been crossed. William allegedly confided to a close friend, saying, "She acts like she's already ruling and she's treating my wife like an inconvenience." This wasn't Camilla's first warning. Months earlier, palace insiders confirmed she had received a private memorandum from the Lord Chamberlain, urging her to respect constitutional hierarchies following an incident in which she tried to influence a military honor list. At the time, the matter was quietly buried. But with these new developments, the monarchy faced what could be described as a full-blown insurrection from within, one that even Anne and Edward were now navigating carefully. Edward, who had long remained on the sidelines of the growing tension between William and Camilla, finally took a decisive step back. Sources reveal that Camilla had submitted a formal petition to expand her ceremonial duties, a move that would have positioned her ahead of William at certain Commonwealth events. Both Anne and Edward refused to approve the request. Privately, Anne reportedly remarked, "There's tradition and then there's ambition." Camilla is confusing the two. For William, the breach went beyond personal affront, it was systemic. Camilla had crossed the line from influence into outright interference, and someone had to restore order. When William confronted his father, it became painfully clear that King Charles was no longer steering the ship. Once the steady hand between competing factions, Charles had become a ghost in his own reign, frail, silent, and increasingly retreating to Sandringham. His absence created a power vacuum, and in that void, William rose. What the king refused to articulate, his son would now assert. For months, whispers of Charles's declining health had been carefully managed behind gilded walls. Public appearances were shortened, official engagements quietly reassigned, and a man once celebrated for his intellect now appeared withdrawn, lost in thought, while palace conflicts grew louder around him. As Camilla's actions escalated, many expected Charles to intervene, but he did not. Senior aides repeatedly brought the matter to his attention, showing him reports, transcripts, and correspondence. Each time, he simply nodded and moved on. There were no reprimands, no clarifications, only silence. It was not indecision but abdication in disguise. For William, this silence became a moment of reckoning. The king's inaction spoke louder than any royal decree, effectively giving him implicit permission to act. Not everyone, however, interpreted it the same way. Princess Anne, ever vigilant for stability, made an unannounced visit to Sandringham. Sources described the conversation as long, painful, and heartbreaking. She left visibly shaken, with those close to her noting she had never seen Charles so distant or unreachable. Whatever trust she had placed in William to contain the escalating chaos was gone. Meanwhile, Camilla grew increasingly desperate. Realizing her position was under threat not only politically but structurally, she attempted to speak with the king directly. Yet, in an unprecedented move, her calls were deferred, and her request for an in-person audience denied. Palace insiders confirmed a directive had been issued: no unscheduled meetings, even for the Queen. Whether this decision came from Charles himself or his advisors remains unclear, but the message was unmistakable: he would not shield her this time. Behind the scenes, it was Catherine who urged William to act decisively. She had observed the toll the turmoil was taking, not just on their family, but on the monarchy's public image. According to confidants, she told William bluntly, "We either lead now or we lose everything." Tea was no longer simply a matter of control, it was about legacy. About preserving a monarchy teetering precariously between tradition and transformation. As the monarchy teetered on the brink of collapse, William, hardened by years of preparation and buried emotion, recognized that the moment had arrived. He no longer waited for permission or sought approval. The weight of the crown, though not yet his, rested fully on his shoulders. With his father absent and his stepmother unchecked, William stepped into the void not merely as a prince, but as a ruler in waiting, ready to voice what his father never would. And when he acted, it was with clarity and authority, not whispers or hesitation. In a public and deliberate proclamation that shook Britain, Prince William stood before a golden lectern, stern and resolute, and delivered words no one had anticipated. Queen Camilla would no longer appear at court. The statement was more than a rebuke, it was royal exile, irrevocable and immediate. There were no leaks, no press rumors, and no forewarning, even to senior officials. A royal broadcast was scheduled for 6 p.m. under the simple notice: the Prince of Wales will speak regarding the future of the monarchy. Within minutes, the nation was transfixed, every eye on their screens as William issued a decree that would rupture the royal equilibrium. His tone was measured, yet his eyes burned with determination. He spoke of a monarchy at a crossroads, emphasizing the need to restore trust, stability, and responsibility over entitlement. Camilla's name was never mentioned, but his meaning was unmistakable. He condemned undue influence, highlighted breaches of internal harmony, and called for a new chapter free from shadows or whispers of impropriety. It was accountability cloaked in regal formality, a queen removed not by death or abdication, but by declaration. Within an hour, the palace confirmed what the public had already realized. Camilla would no longer attend royal functions and was relieved of all ceremonial duties, with no further statements forthcoming. A reign that had been expected to endure for a generation had ended with a stroke of a pen at Clarence House. The fallout was immediate. Eyewitnesses described Camilla being ushered into a car, her face obscured and hands visibly trembling. She had been unaware that the announcement would be made that day. Whatever private negotiations had occurred were either ignored or failed entirely. The once unshakable consort had been cast aside by the very institution she had sought to influence. William's delivery was surgical, cold, and precise, yet beneath the edge there was unmistakable pain. Observers noted a subtle tremor in his voice during the final lines, revealing a man not just wielding authority but carrying the wounds of betrayal. Standing just behind him was Catherine, silent, steadfast, and deliberate in her placement. Her presence was a statement. William was not alone, and the decision had been deliberate and reinforced. The future queen stood unwavering behind her king in waiting, symbolizing unity and resolve. For the royal family, this was more than a speech, it was a turning point, a clear dividing line between the past and the new era that now demanded to unfold. One monarchy had ended, and another was quietly beginning in its place. As the nation collectively gasped at the broadcast, Camilla, once unshakable, fractured under the weight of her sudden exile. Aides described her as pale, trembling, and barely able to speak. Her removal was not only political, it was profoundly personal. In a matter of hours, the royal facade, long upheld through unspoken rules and polished smiles, shattered completely. Clarence House, the former epicenter of her influence, fell into an eerie silence. Staff moved cautiously, whispers filling the halls. The woman who had outmaneuvered scandal after scandal, outlasted every critic, now sat isolated behind closed doors, blindsided by a broadcast that stripped her of her title, erased her presence, and left her legacy hanging by a thread. Witnesses describe her reaction as almost unrecognizable, not rage, not denial, but absolute, numbing devastation. The ripple effect was immediate. Her longtime private secretary, a fixture by her side for over 15 years, quietly resigned just hours after William's address. No statement, no farewell, only a silent departure signaling that Camilla's inner circle was already fracturing. Palace insiders whispered of arguments behind closed doors at Clarence House. Tears, unanswered calls, and a woman increasingly isolated even within her own home. One royal aide was overheard remarking, "She's not fighting. She's sinking." And a move sources describe as desperate. Camilla reached across the Atlantic, attempting to contact Harry and Meghan, two individuals she had once regarded with suspicion and disdain. Whether her outreach was a plea for sympathy, strategy, or sheer survival remains unclear, but it revealed an undeniable truth. She was scrambling for relevance, clinging to the last vestiges of power within her reach. Yet the one person whose support she most needed remained silent. King Charles offered no public defense, no private comfort. He neither visited Clarence House nor summoned her to Sandringham. He did not utter a single word in her support. That silence cut deeper than William's decree. It was abandonment wrapped in royal formality, and Camilla felt every inch of it. Desperate to reclaim control of the narrative, she began drafting a personal statement. Sources close to her suggest it was emotional, unfiltered, and laced with language that could have sent shockwaves through the monarchy. Whether it will ever be released is uncertain, but its very existence confirms that Camilla is not prepared to vanish quietly, not yet. Meanwhile, inside the palace, tension reached a fever pitch. Staff loyalty lines blurred. Some quietly sympathized with Camilla, feeling she had been humiliated, while others stood firmly behind William, convinced that his decisive action had restored order to a monarchy teetering on the edge. Dignity had been restored to a fractured monarchy, but every corridor whispered of alliances forming, and every glance hinted at sides being chosen. This was no ordinary royal rift, it was a civil war in silks and titles. Yet Camilla was not the only one caught off guard, for what William planned next would redefine the very structure of royal bloodlines. With Camilla sidelined, he moved swiftly to secure the future, implementing new protocols, reassigning titles, and quietly reshuffling the hierarchy of who mattered and who did not. Behind the palace's gold-embossed doors, William was charting a new royal map. There was no fanfare, no press briefings, no balcony declarations, but within the walls of the palace, the shift was unmistakable. He was not merely cleaning up the past, he was fortifying the next generation. And private meetings with senior advisors and key royals, William began redefining roles, redistributing responsibilities, and signaling a new order of succession that emphasized trust as much as bloodline. Princess Charlotte, long admired for her poise beyond her years, was quietly elevated in ceremonial visibility. Her schedule, once sparse and protective, now included state events, charity galas, and even plans for solo appearances alongside Catherine. Sources close to Kensington say this was no accident. Charlotte, William believed, represented the modern monarchy, a blend of grace and grit that would lead. She would no longer be second tier behind George. She was rising. It was not only titles and appearances that were shifting. Security measures reflected the same careful planning. Prince Louis, traditionally shielded from the public eye, received a significant upgrade to his royal protection detail, signaling that he, too, was being positioned for prominence. Observers familiar with palace operations noted that such measures were not symbolic, they indicated a child destined to matter in the near future. At the same time, a quieter purge took place. All of Camilla's extended family, including her son Tom Parker Bowles, were formally removed from royal spaces. Invitations were rescinded, offices dissolved, and advisory access revoked. "It's like they never existed," one insider remarked, and for William, that was precisely the point. The monarchy was not a club to be inherited through marriage. It was a bloodline that needed protection from within. Yet while some were removed, others were summoned. Princess Anne and Zara Tindall, both recognized for their loyalty and discretion, were invited into what palace aides now describe as the inner circle of the new order, a carefully curated team tasked with stabilizing and guiding the monarchy into the next era. William's consolidation of power continued with the formation of what palace aides now call the Continuity Council, an informal but highly influential group designed to guide the monarchy's future while honoring tradition. Princess Anne brought historical insight and unwavering loyalty, while Zara Tindall carried public trust and relatability. Together, they flanked William in a way Camilla never could. This was not a simple family reshuffle, it was a calculated strategic alliance. The silence surrounding Harry and Meghan was equally deliberate. In William's revised plans, their names were absent. There was no mention of reconciliation, no acknowledgement of their children, and no recognition of their royal status. For William, their chapter was closed. They were no longer adversaries, they were irrelevant. Though unspoken publicly, that decision reverberated through palace corridors like distant thunder. Camilla's legacy, meanwhile, was quietly dismantled. Charities she had championed for years, many closely tied to her personal brand, were placed under review. Some were reassigned, others left in limbo. The woman who had once led initiatives from abuse awareness to arts funding was now absent from the very boards she had shaped. This was not out of disdain, but strategy. William was systematically removing her influence from every corridor of power. Behind the scenes, the orchestration of Camilla's fall was neither spontaneous nor accidental. While the public fixated on William's steady hand and Catherine's poised support, the true architects operated quietly, invisible yet decisive. These were palace veterans, blood-born, duty-forged, and committed to protecting the crown even if it meant opposing a queen. The first pivotal ally in William's covert ascent was Princess Anne. Her distaste for Camilla, widely noted since their icy fallout in 2023, had evolved from quiet irritation to full alignment with William. She provided historical perspective and a counterweight in strategy meetings once dominated by Camilla's allies. Prince Edward allegedly played an even bolder role. Sources claim he personally contributed to drafting the language of the so-called Exile clause, a confidential protocol rooted in centuries-old precedent. This clause allowed for the removal of ceremonial privileges in cases of persistent destabilization of sovereign harmony, a rule long buried in royal archives and resurrected at precisely the right moment. Meanwhile, the Lord Chamberlain held multiple unannounced meetings with William's private office in the weeks leading up to the declaration. These were strategy sessions focused not on what to do, but on how to act without leaving traces. Intelligence briefings further informed the plan. A figure reportedly with MI5 ties, someone who had previously advised on royal security, brought troubling information to William's attention. Alleged overseas dealings connected to Camilla's philanthropic ventures, financial flows raising red flags, and other discrete concerns provided both legal and strategic ammunition. While none of it had been publicly acknowledged, it gave William the evidence needed to justify his decisive and unprecedented actions. Though none of the intelligence or correspondence was ever made public, it intensified the internal push for decisive action. William now possessed both moral and institutional justification, and the shadows of secrecy gave him the cover to act. In a curious twist, a senior royal archivist was quietly relocated weeks before the official broadcast. Palace whispers claimed the archivist had stumbled upon personal, handwritten letters containing revelations so damning they cemented William's resolve. The contents remain classified, but those who have glimpsed them say they left no room for doubt. Days before the Exile announcement, the Queen Mother's old confidant, now in his late 80s, was seen entering Clarence House. Once a key advisor during Elizabeth's reign, his sudden reappearance was more than symbolic. Some believe he delivered a final piece of guidance, a whispered blessing to protect the monarchy at all costs. According to insiders, his advice was simple yet striking: do what must be done, and do it without regret. Yet no strategy could prepare the palace for Camilla's next move. Exiled but not erased, she struck quietly. A final, anonymous message surfaced from an undisclosed location. It bypassed official channels, carried no signature, yet its tone, language, and intention were unmistakably hers. The message referenced buried truths, selective silences, rewritten histories, and the weaponization of legacy. Though it named no one directly, it was a clear challenge to the Crown's narrative. Within hours, the internet erupted. Hashtags referencing Camilla trended globally, fueled by speculation, outrage, and a hunger for answers. The public, already polarized by the royal upheaval, now focused on one lingering question: what did Camilla know? Rumors swirled that she possessed private letters exchanged between Diana and Charles, journals, recordings, and even documents involving foreign dealings and succession strategies. Nothing was confirmed, but Camilla didn't need confirmation, she needed doubt, and she had generated it, turning the monarchy's control of the public narrative into quicksand. Reports also suggested she had engaged a high-profile journalist known for explosive royal exposés, with meetings reportedly held abroad, far from the watchful eyes of the British press. Some speculated a memoir, others feared a public reckoning timed to exact maximum disruption just as the monarchy sought to stabilize. Within palace walls, tension reached a boiling point. Loyalists still sympathetic to Camilla pressed for countermeasures, a statement, a legal challenge, or even an emergency appearance by King Charles. But William remained steadfast. William refused to flinch. To aides pleading for a response to Camilla's maneuvers, he reportedly said, "Let her speak. She only buries herself." It wasn't arrogance, it was calculation. William understood a critical truth. The more Camilla broadcast from exile, the more she revealed her own motives. Yet even with that clarity, the damage was already done. The royal court, once thought free of her influence, now found itself haunted by the specter of her words. Every public appearance, every pause from Charles, every subtle shift in William's tone was scrutinized through the lens of her potential threat. Though she held no throne, her voice, however distant, however veiled, still echoed in the corridors of power. Then, just as the storm seemed at its peak, the unthinkable happened. Camilla vanished. No farewell, no explanation, only a closed gate and a silent Clarence house. Royal sources confirmed she would not return, but the abrupt disappearance left a single chilling question. What did she take with her? One day, the press speculated over her next move, the final card in her arsenal, perhaps a memoir or an interview. The next, all movement ceased. Clarence house emptied, guards were rotated, curtains drawn. By the time anyone noticed, it was over. Camilla had disappeared intentionally, not into exile abroad, but into a quiet, controlled disappearance, leaving uncertainty and unfinished business in her wake. The woman who had once demanded the world see her as queen had now left it all behind in silence. Official palace records were updated quietly but thoroughly. Her name was removed from the public court circular. Patronages were marked for reassessment. Appearances scheduled months in advance vanished from calendars without replacement. In every official sense, she had been erased. Yet the suddenness of her exit only intensified the unease. This was not closure, it was a retreat, and every shadow, every empty room became a source of speculation. Security at Clarence House was quietly reassigned, longtime staff relocated, routines disrupted. Trusted aides and drivers were shifted to William or Charles not purely out of necessity, but as a deliberate symbol. The palace was not merely adjusting to her absence, it was sealing the door behind her. Inside Buckingham Palace, the purge continued. Portraits of Camilla, once prominently displayed beside Charles and the late Queen, were removed, some archived, others returned to private collections. No announcement, no acknowledgement, history was being rewritten, frame by frame. The final directive to royal staff was absolute. Her reign was not to be referenced. In speeches, tours, or ceremonial notes, Camilla's chapter was not to be mentioned unless strictly required by protocol. The monarchy itself seemed to decree that acknowledging her only reopened old wounds. They sought closure, finality. Yet one whisper refused to fade. A sealed envelope, handwritten and locked away, was rumored to contain Camilla's final words or perhaps her ultimate leverage. Some claimed it included a list of names, others a confession. No one knows for certain, and the palace will not confirm its existence, but those closest to William are said to be aware of it. The mere possibility continues to haunt every corridor of power. The fear is not that Camilla will return, but that she left something behind that cannot be destroyed. The royal family issued one last statement, short, vague, carefully crafted, a call for unity, a step forward, A moment to heal, but no mention of Camilla, no reflection, no acknowledgement. It was not simply a closing of ranks, it was the deliberate silencing of an era. And so, for now, the palace breathes. But with secrets buried in exile, one question lingers. Has this war truly ended, or is the next chapter already being written?